Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition Battle Report 24. 2,000 points, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle versus Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch. Let's begin by taking a quick look around the board and at where the objective markers have been placed. Beginning in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 6 right here next to this crater. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 1 right here next to this ruin. And on this side of the board, finally, this 2 foot by 2 foot section, objective marker 4 is right here next to this ruin. Moving over to the other side of the board, starting with this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 5 right here next to this ruin. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 3 right here next to this ruin. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, we have objective marker 2 right here next to this ruin. A reminder at the beginning of the game that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will have 9 command points available for this mission, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch army will have 8 plus D3 command points available for the mission, thanks to using the stratagem Reward of Chaos at the beginning of the game in order to bring the second Hellforged artifact. And thanks to Kairos Fateweaver being the warlord, they get an extra D3 command points, and the symbol is a 6, so they will get an additional 3, which means they will have a total of 11 command points for this mission. Now we need to roll for which random map deployment the armies will be using today, rolling a dice, and getting a 4, which is Hammer and Anvil. On a dice roll of a 1, 2, or a 3, the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will deploy on this side here, the near side, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will deploy on the far side, right next to the wall. On a 4, 5, or 6, it'll be opposite, so Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will deploy on the far side, and Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will deploy on the near side. And so here's the dice roll. Getting a 6, so Nurgle will deploy on the far side, and Tzeentch will deploy on the near side. On a 1, 2, or 3, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will begin deploying first. On a 4, 5, or 6, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying first. And that's a 3, so Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will begin deploying first. We will be back after the deployment. So the deployment is now finished. Chaos Daemons of Nurgle began deploying first, and they also finished deploying first, which means they will go first unless Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are able to seize the initiative. Let's take a quick look around the board at where the models have been placed. Beginning with the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle deployment, going from right to left from Tzeentch's perspective, we have the first squad of Plague Bearers, a Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, squad of Plague Drones, the second squad of Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 2, Great Unclean One with Doomsday Bell and Corruption, the Warlord Rodigus, the second Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings, the second Plague Drone squad, very wobbly on this crater, the third and final squad of Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 6, and finally the Great Unclean One with Doomsday Bell and Plague Flail. Now moving over to the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch deployment, going from right to left from Nurgle's perspective, we have the first squad of Pink Horrors. This squad has the demonic icon and the instrument. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. The second squad of Pink Horrors sitting on objective marker 4. The Warlord, Kairos Fateweaver. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff. Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings. The first squad of Screamers. The second Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings. The second squad of Screamers. And right inside this ruin, through the windows here, we can see the third and final squad of Pink Horrors sitting on objective marker 5, which is right over here. And just for perspective, here's the view from behind. So now the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will attempt to seize the initiative looking for 6, and they fail by rolling a 5. So let's move into Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1. A reminder at the beginning of Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1 that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 9 command points available and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 11 command points available. A reminder that this is the big rulebook Maelstrom of War mission, Contact Lost, and so at the beginning of their turn, the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle drew 1 tactical objective card and they drew Witch Hunter. Score 1 victory point if at least 1 enemy psyker was destroyed during this turn. Going into the movement phase, this squad of Plague Bearers is going to move up the board up to 5 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, getting 5 additional inches for 10 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement right here. They are not yet within 3 inches of the center of objective marker 3. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 2 will remain still. This squad of Plague Bearers sitting on objective marker 6 will also remain still. This Great Unclean One is going to move 7 inches up the board, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, getting 6 additional inches for 13 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right here, and he is now within 3 inches of the center of objective marker 1. This squad of plague drones is now going to move up the board up to 10 inches, and they will also declare an advance, adding +1 thanks to their instrument. And here's their advance roll, rolling 5 additional inches, which becomes a 6 thanks to the instrument, for 16 inches of total movement. And these plague drones did not move up the full 16 inches possible, but they moved about 14 inches in order to move up to here. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, rolling 4 additional inches for up to 16 inches of total movement. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle also did not move up the full 16 inches, but instead moved over in order to be behind the Plague Drones and the Great Unclean One, in order to give both of them the ability to reroll hit rolls of 1 if Tzeentch should charge either or both of them. The Warlord Rodigus will now move up the board up to 7 inches and will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, rolling just 1 additional inch for 8 inches of total movement. And Rodigus will end up right here. Next, this Great Unclean One will also move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's the advance roll, rolling 4 additional inches for 11 inches of total movement. And the Great Unclean One will end up right here. Next, this squad of plague drones is going to move up the board up to 10 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, rolling 2 additional inches, but getting to add 1 since they also have an instrument, so up to 13 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement right here, and they are also now within 3 inches of the center of objective marker 3. Finally, this Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, rolling 2 additional inches for 14 inches of total movement. And the Demon Prince of Nurgle will finish his movement here in order to be within 6 inches of Rodigus, the Great Unclean One, and the Plague Drones, in order to give them the ability to reroll hit rolls of 1 if Tzeentch should charge any of those 3 units. Going into the Psychic phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, this Great Unclean One with Corruption will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Screamers right here, as they are the closest visible unit within 18 inches. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a double 6, which will be a perils, but it will go off with a 12. However, Kairos Fateweaver is within 24 inches and will attempt to deny the witch, and fails with a 9, adding the 2 from his psychic test bonus, so it will go off. First, however, D3 mortal wounds onto himself, doing just 1 mortal wound from the perils of the warp. 1 5-up disgustingly resilient roll, and he fails. So the Great Unclean One will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 17. But because he did roll double 6s, he will get to cause D6 mortal wounds onto the Screamers, and he causes 2 mortal wounds. And so 1 Screamer will be killed off, since they have 2 wounds base. The Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will now attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto the Great Unclean One. Fleshy Abundance has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets it with a 10, so it will go off. Kairos Fateweaver, however, is within 24 inches, so he will attempt to deny the witch, looking for at least 11, and fails by rolling an 8, with the +2 psychic test bonus included. So Fleshy Abundance will go off, And while it does heal D3 wounds, the Great Unclean One is only missing 1 wound, and so therefore he will go from 17 wounds back up to full 18 starting wounds. Radagast will now attempt to manifest Miasma of Pestilence and Virulent Blessing onto the Plague Drones right here. Starting with Virulent Blessing, which has a warp charge value of 7, and he passes with an 8. Kairos Fateweaver will use his third and final Deny the Witch test, and also rolls an 8 with the +2 psychic test bonus included, which means it will not successfully deny. So Virulent Blessing will go off. This also means that Radagast's special ability Deluge of Nurgle is activated, which states each time Radagast successfully manifests a psychic power with a psychic test of 7 or more, the closest enemy unit to him suffers a mortal wound after the effects of the psychic power have been resolved. And so the closest enemy unit to Radagast is actually this Demon Prince of Tzeentch, which means the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will suffer 1 mortal wound and drop from 8 starting wounds down to 7. Now for Miasma of Pestilence, which has a warp charge value of 6. And he fails with a 3. However, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point, going from 9 down to 8 for a command reroll in order to reroll the 1. Looking for at least a 4, and they get it with a 6. Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to deny the Witch, and he does with a 12. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe because he is the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he passes with a 9. Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for a 10, and fails with a 7, adding in his psychic test bonus, so it will go off. And it will cause D3 mortal wounds, and it will cause just 1 mortal wound. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will drop from 16 starting wounds down to 15. Finally, this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Pink Horrors because they are slightly closer than the Lord of Change, which makes them the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and it fails with a 5. Going into the shooting phase, there is only 1 model within the Nurgle army that is in range to shoot, and that will be this lone plague drone with an icon, who is within range to be able to fire its death heads into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. 2 shots hitting on 5 since it advanced, and re-rolling 1s, getting 1 hit and 1 definite miss. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, and it fails to wound. Going into the assault phase, there are no assaults to declare, which means going into the fight phase, there are no fights to resolve. So now going into the morale phase. This squad of Screamers did lose 1 model this turn, however they have a leadership of 7 naturally, which means it's impossible for them to fail after only losing 1 model. They are also within 6 inches of Kairos Fateweaver, which means they can use his leadership of 10. So either way, it would be impossible for them to fail. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Nurgle failed to complete Witch Hunter, however, they will hold on to it. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 1, the score currently sits at 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 1, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 11 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have 8 command points available. At the beginning of the turn, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch drew their 1 tactical objective card for the turn, which is Defend Objective 3. Score 2 victory points if you control Objective Marker 3 at the end of 2 consecutive turns. And Objective Marker 3 is this one right here, currently being held by a squad of Plague Drones. And before going into the movement phase, I need to make 1 correction from the deployment, and that is I had said that this is Kairos Fateweaver and this is the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, but that is incorrect. The more blue one is the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, and the more purple one with the rainbow wings is Kairos Fateweaver, and that's quite obvious because the purple one with rainbow wings is the one with 2 heads, so I do apologize for saying them in the wrong order. but this is the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, this blue one, and this is Kairos Fateweaver back here. So going into the movement phase of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are in a little bit of trouble, as the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle, in Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 1, managed to get multiple lucky advance rolls, and so now a big chunk of the army from the Nurgle side is within 12 inches, or right next to 12 inches away, from the deployment zone for Tzeentch. And this is a problem because this means if Tzeentch sits back and does nothing, Nurgle will definitely be able to charge next turn. But Tzeentch is not as good in close combat as Nurgle, and so there's a chance they could lose everything if they make the first strike and charge first, especially since all of the Nurgle models are kind of all next to each other, giving each other bonuses and able to help each other out. However, Tzeentch can't exactly fall back either because, of course, at the end of Nurgle's turn, Nurgle had units holding a total of 4 objective markers, which means if Tzeentch does nothing, then Nurgle will be able to draw 4 new tactical objective cards, along with still holding on to Witch Hunter, of course. And that's just asking for a runaway victory. So I have no idea if this is the correct strategy or not from Tzeentch's perspective. If you can think of a better strategy, please let me know in the comments down below for future battle reports. From what it looks like, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to have to charge into combat first in order to get that alpha strike and to try to earn first blood. And when I say they're going to have to charge into combat, I mean with everyone except for the 2 squads of pink horrors towards the back that are currently holding objective markers, because Tzeentch is going to need every model it can to do as much damage as possible, but the problem is if they don't do enough, they're just going to get wiped out in the next turn. So this might be a very, very fast battle report. So going into the movement phase, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to begin by having the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe move up the board up to 12 inches. And the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will end up right here. He is just over an inch away from the Plague Drones, and he is just under 2 inches away from the Great Unclean One. Now this squad of pink horrors is going to move up the board up to 6 inches, and they will finish their movement right here. Kairos Fateweaver is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. Next, this squad of Screamers is going to move up the board up to 16 inches. And they will finish their movement right here, with the front 4 being just over an inch away from the Plague Drones. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is now going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will finish his movement right there. Next, this squad of 5 Screamers is going to move up the board up to 16 inches. And they will finish their movement right here. Next, this Demon Prince will move up the board up to 12 inches. And the Demon Prince will finish his movement right here. Next, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will move up the board up to 12 inches. And he will finish his movement right here. This squad of pink horrors sitting on objective marker 4 will remain still. This squad of pink horrors sitting on objective marker 5 will also remain still. Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use 2 command points going from 11 down to 9 in order to use the stratagem Locus of Conjuration. Use this stratagem at the start of your psychic phase, select a Tzeentch demon character from your army. Until the end of the phase, you can re-roll failed psychic tests made for friendly Tzeentch demon units within 6 inches of that model. And the target of the stratagem will be the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff, because then it will affect himself, obviously, but it will also affect these pink horrors, Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, and Kairos Fateweaver up here. And so the first unit to attempt to manifest a psychic power will be this squad of pink horrors, who will attempt to manifest Smite from this pink horror right here, which is important because that means that they will attempt to manifest it onto the Plague Drones, not the Great Unclean One, because to this pink horror right here, the Plague Drones are the closest visible enemy unit. And Smite has a warp charge value of 5, but they only roll 1 dice, and of course they get to reroll thanks to the Locus of Conjuration stratagem. So here's the reroll, and they still fail with a 3. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones. Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he gets it with a 7. The Demon Prince of Nurgle on that side of the board will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least an 8, and he fails by rolling a 4. So it will go off, and it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 2 of them, failing only 1. And so this plague drone right here in the middle of the back will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Then this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to manifest Smite onto this Great Unclean One because it is the closest visible enemy unit. Smite now is a warp charge value of 7, and he fails with a 3. Now the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Plague Drones because they are the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches, and he will also attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto Kairos Fateweaver. Starting with Smite, which now is a warp charge value of 8, and he passes with an 8 thanks to the +2 from his Psychic Test bonus. The Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings that's right in front of the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 9, and fails with the 4. So it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 1 mortal wound. 1 5-up Disgustingly Resilient roll, which passes. And now for Boon of Change from the Lord of Change onto Kairos Fateweaver, which needs a 7, and he passes with a 7, thanks to his Psychic Test bonus. The Great Unclean One with Plague Flail, which is right in front of him, will attempt to deny the Witch, and rolls a 7, but that will not be able to successfully deny. However, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point going from 8 down to 7 in order to use a command reroll to reroll the 1. Because on a 2 or higher it is successfully denied, and now the Deny the Witch passes with an 11, so Boon of Change will not go off. Kairos Fateweaver will now attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate, and then he will also attempt to manifest Smite and Bolt of Change onto the Plague Drones right next to him. Starting with Gaze of Fate, which has a warp charge value of 6, and he passes with an 11. The Great Unclean One armed with Corruption will now attempt to deny the Witch, looking for a 12, and fails with a 4. So Gaze of Fate will successfully go off. Now for Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 9. And he passes with a 10. In order to try to get D6 mortal wounds instead of D3 and to make it harder to deny, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point going from 9 down to 8 for a command reroll to reroll the 2. Because at worst, it'll still be a 9, which means it will still pass. So here's the reroll, and now they successfully pass Smite from Kairos Fateweaver with a 13 thanks to a Psychic Test bonus, which makes it impossible to deny. And it will now do D6 mortal wounds, and it will do 4 mortal wounds. Plague Drones will take 4 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, and they fail all 4 of them. And they have already used a command point this psychic phase, so they cannot re-roll. And so that will kill off one of the regular Plague Drones in the back, leaving 5 models left alive in the squad. Now for Bolt of Change, which has a warp charge value of 8, and that fails with a 7, so they will get to re-roll that thanks to Locus of Conjuration. And here's the re-roll, and they pass with a 9. So Rodigus will use his first Deny the Witch test, and he fails with a 6. And it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it will do just 1 mortal wound. 1 5-up Disgustingly Resilient, which fails. So this Plague Drone back here will drop from 4 starting wounds down to 3. Finally, this Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstav will attempt to manifest Smite onto that same Plague Drone unit, and he will also attempt to manifest Flickering Flames onto this squad of Pink Horrors. And starting with Smite, which now is a warp charge value of 10, and he fails with a 6 thanks to the +2 Psychic Test bonus and +1 from the Everstav, so he will re-roll. And here's the re-roll, and passes with a 12, thanks to the +1 from the Everstav and the +2 Psychic Test bonus. So it is impossible to deny, and it will do D6 mortal wounds. And here's the D6 mortal wounds, and it will cause 3 mortal wounds. 3 5-up Disgustingly Resilient rolls, and they fail 3 more. Nurgle doesn't want to make Disgustingly Resilient rolls today, apparently. And so that will kill off the wounded Plague Drone in the back, removing his final 3 wounds. And now for Flickering Flames, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he gets that with an 8. Rodigus will use his second and final Deny the Witch test, and fails with a 7. So Flickering Flames will successfully go off. Going into the shooting phase, this squad of Pink Horrors is going to fire their Coruscating Flames into this squad of Plague Drones. 20 shots from the Pink Horrors hitting on 4s, getting 9 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, but adding 1 to the wound rolls thanks to Flickering Flames, so wounding on 4s. And that helped a lot, getting 6 wounds with 3 of them being 4s. 6 5-up Invulnerable saves, and getting 3 6s, so passing 3, failing 3. 1 damage apiece, so 3 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 2 of those, failing only 1. And so the final regular plague drone here will fall from 4 starting wounds down to 3 left. Going into the assault phase, we have multiple charges to declare. First is this Lord of Change will declare charge only onto the plague drones. Then this squad of pink horrors will declare multi-charge onto the plague drones and the Great Unclean One, because they will be able to fit through in between the Great Unclean One and the Lord of Change. This squad of screamers will declare a charge onto the plague drones. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch will declare a charge onto this squad of plague drones. This squad of screamers will declare multi-charge onto the plague drones and the Great Unclean One. This Demon Prince will declare charge onto the Great Unclean One. And finally, Kairos Fate Weaver is going to attempt the long charge, and he will attempt to charge into Rodigus. And finally, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt a charge onto this squad of plague drones on the other side of the ruin. So now the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will make his charge against the plague drones. He is just over an inch away and there's no crater, so he will automatically make it into combat. And he is now in base to base with the plague drone, who is armed with the demonic icon, and there is still enough space in between the Lord of Change and the Great Unclean One with the plague flail for the pink horrors to fit in. So now we will resolve the charge from the pink horrors onto the Great Unclean One. But before I forget, we will quickly do the overwatch from the plague drones onto the Lord of Change. 8 shots hitting on 6s, and all fail to hit, so the overwatch completely failed. So now for the pink horrors charging the Great Unclean One and the plague drones, with the Great Unclean One being the primary target, of course, because it is closer. This Great Unclean One with the plague flail will fire its plague flail in overwatch, since the pink horrors are within 7 inches. So 3 shots hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Strength 7 versus toughness 3 means wounding on a 2, and it wounds 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. They are 2 damage apiece, and the damage does carry over from model to model, so that will kill off 2 pink horrors. And so 2 pink horrors at the back will be killed off. And I do apologize. I went back and looked at the footage for the overwatch from the plague drones onto the Lord of Change, and there was 1 hit roll of 1, which of course will be re-rolled because the Demon Prince is nearby. And of course it hits. That's what I get for forgetting it in the first place. Strength 4 versus toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, re-rolling 1s, and it fails to wound. So the overwatch from the plague drones did actually do nothing. And so now the charge range from the pink horrors, adding 1 thanks to their instrument. And they will get 12 inches total of charge. So even with charging through the crater that they are sitting in, that should make it into combat, since they were within 7 inches already of the Great Unclean One for Overwatch. So they are in. I don't know how well the camera is going to be able to see this because the Iridescent Horror is far back in there, but the Iridescent Horror is now in base to base with the Plague Drone with Demonic Icon and the Great Unclean One. The Pink Horror with Demonic Icon is within an inch of the Great Unclean One, but also within an inch of the Iridescent Horror. The instrument within the squad is within an inch of the Demonic Icon, so those 3 models will be able to attack the Iridescent Horror, the Demonic Icon, and the instrument. However, the 5 regular pink horrors are all over an inch away from the Demonic Icon, and therefore they will not be able to fight. However, by successfully charging in, now Tzeentch has a troop choice sitting on Objective Marker 1, which is in the middle of all that, which means that until those troops are completely taken off of the objective, Tzeentch will control it regardless of how many Nurgle models are around it, since none of the Nurgle models over in this area are troop choices as well. So Tzeentch now controls Objective Marker 1 for sure until that pink horror squad is killed off. Next, this squad of screamers will charge in, and they are just over an inch away, so they will automatically make it in. And so now everyone's either within an inch of the enemy or within an inch of someone who's within an inch, and therefore all 6 of them will be in combat. And also, Objective Marker 3 is right underneath the base of this screamer on the end here, which means that currently there are more screamers within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker than there are plague drones, which means that technically at this point, Tzeentch is holding Objective Marker 3 as well. This Demon Prince will charge in next. He is just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it in. And I just realized that we had forgotten Overwatch for this Plague Drone squad as well, so we will go and do that. 12 shots from the Death's Heads into the Screamers, because they did charge first, hitting on 6s, re-rolling 1s, getting 2 hits and 2 re-rolls. And here's the 2 re-rolls. still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, rerolling 1, getting a definite fail and a reroll. And here's the reroll, which wounds. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. So the Overwatch failed to do anything. Next, this squad of 5 Screamers will charge into both the Plague Drones and the Great Unclean One, and we will roll for their charge distance just to make sure we know exactly where everyone can go. There is no Overwatch because the Plague Drones are already locked, and the Great Unclean One with Corruption has no shooting attacks. So here's the Screamer's charge distance, getting 5 inches. And they are all tangled up with each other, but they are in combat, with these two being in combat with the Plague Drone, but this one in the middle is also in base within an inch of the Great Unclean One. So is this one, within an inch of the Great Unclean One. This one in the back will only be able to be within an inch of a guy who's within an inch of the Plague Drone, whereas this guy in the middle of the back is within an inch of people attacking either the Great Unclean One or the Plague Drone. So it's very confusing, but we could have a minimum of 2 on the Plague Drone to a maximum of 4, and then based off of that, a minimum of 1 on the Great Unclean One up to a maximum of 3. Next, the second Demon Prince, who is down to 7 wounds, will roll for his charge into the Great Unclean One. And here's his charge distance, rolling 5 inches as well. And so the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will make it into combat with the Great Unclean One armed with Corruption. Next, we will have Kairos Fateweaver into Rotigus, which means we will first resolve Rotigus's Overwatch. 2 D6 shots from Rotigus and his streams of brackish filth, getting 3 shots. This weapon automatically hits its target, so 3 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s and getting 2 wounds, but also being able to reroll failed wound rolls, so getting a 3rd wound. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, and passes all 3. So now for Kairos' charge into Rotigus, and he rolls in 11 inches, which will be more than enough. And Kairos Fateweaver is now within an inch and locked in combat with Rotigus. Finally, we will resolve the Lord of Change's charge onto those Plague Drones. And here's his charge distance, rolling a 3. And that won't be enough. However, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point, going from 8 down to 7 for a command reroll, and they are also going to use their reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate in order to reroll both dice. And so here's the new charge distance, rolling 7 inches. And unfortunately for the poor Lord of Change, the 7 inches will not be enough because he does not fit on top of this rampart here, which means he would have to charge all the way around, and then he'd have to charge through the crater, and 7 inches still wouldn't be enough to get him within an inch, even if the crater wasn't there. So that, unfortunately, is a failed charge. So now going into the fight phase, we have to resolve Tzeentch's Locus of Trickery, and getting the worst roll possible, rolling a double 1, taking away the highest. Not that it matters, so hit rolls of 1 will not count. Also, at the start of the fight phase, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are going to use the stratagem Warp Surge for 2 command points, going from 7 down to 5 left. Use this stratagem at the start of any phase, select a unit of demons. Until the end of the phase, you cannot re-roll saving throws for the unit, but its invulnerable save is improved by 1 to a maximum of 3 up. And the target will be the Warlord Kairos Fateweaver, so he will now have a 3-up invulnerable save. And Kairos Fateweaver will also be the first unit to fight in the fight phase, putting all of his attacks onto Rotigus. So Kairos Fateweaver will have 3 attacks base with the Staff of Tomorrow onto Rotigus, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, thanks to the Demon Prince of Tzeentch nearby, getting 4 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s, and getting 3 wounds. And now the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will use 1 command point, going from 5 down to 4, for a command reroll in order to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll, getting a 4th wound. 4 5-up invulnerable saves, and fails all 4 of them. And these will do D6 damage apiece. And that's a solid 17 damage. 17 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 7 and failing 10. And so Rotigus will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 8 left. Now the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle will use 2 command points, going from 7 down to 5, in order to use the stratagem Counteroffensive. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged has fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will select this squad of 6 Plague Drones, which is being attacked by 3 different Chaos Demon of Tzeentch units. And so the way the attacks will be split up will be the Sergeant, the Icon, and these 2 in the back behind them will attack this squad of 6 Screamers, while the Instrument and the regular Plague Drone behind the Instrument will both place their attacks onto the squad of 5 Screamers. None of the Plague Drones will attack the Demon Prince this turn. Starting with the attacks against the squad of 6, we will start with the 5 attacks from the Plague Swords, thanks to the Sergeant, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 2 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, but adding 1 to wound rolls thanks to Virulent Blessing. So wounding on 3s and getting a wound. Re-rolling. And unfortunately, re-rolls happen before modifiers, which means the 3 has to be re-rolled as well. So getting 1 wound total after the re-rolls, but it is a wound roll of a 6, which becomes a 7, which will do double damage thanks to Virulent Blessing, and then add 1 damage, which won't matter against the 2 wound Screamers, but could potentially do 3 damage. So 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails, and so that will be 3 damage. But the damage does not carry over on this weapon, so 1 Screamer and only 1 Screamer will go down. And now 16 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 7 hits and 4 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Getting 1 more hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, re-rolling. And we add 1 to wound rolls, but that happens after the re-rolls, so that 3 sadly does not count at this moment. So getting 3 wounds and 5 re-rolls. And that's pretty good. Getting 6 wounds total. And one of them is a 6, which of course does double damage and adds 1 damage. So the 6 is actually a wound roll of a 7, which means it would do 5 damage, and the 5s become 6s, so they would do 3 damage. But unfortunately, none of the damage will carry over onto other models, and so all 6 of them can be rolled together for the invulns because they will only kill off 1 2-wound Screamer apiece at the most. And here's the reroll. Or here's the invulnerable saves, and they fail 5 4-up invulnerable saves. So all 5 remaining Screamers are killed off. And they can't re-roll because they already used a command point this turn. I should say they already used a command point in this phase when Kairos Fate Weaver attacked Rodigus. And so these 5 Screamers are wiped out, and that's first blood for Chaos Demons of Nurgle. So much for holding objective marker 3. And so now for the 2 Plague Drones against the squad of 5. 2 Plague Sword attacks, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 1 hit. Wounding on a 4, re-rolling. And of course the re-roll happens before the modifier, so that 3, we can't just take that 3 and run with it. So here's the reroll, although it's a 6 anyway, so that's even better. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. 8 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, getting 4 hits and 2 re-rolls. And here's the 2 re-rolls, getting 2 more hits. Wounding on 4s, re-rolling. Of course, technically they all wound, but we have to re-roll the 3s. And here's the re-rolls, but getting 2 more wounds anyways. 6 4-up invulnerable saves, and they failed 4 of those. Wow. Alright then. This is what happens when statistics decide not to cooperate. 4 of the 5 remaining Screamers from this squad are removed, and they will leave this one here, which is only in combat with the Plague Drones, so that the Great Unclean one with Corruption can't finish that squad off. Although I'm not sure that that's going to matter. So now, going back to charging units from Tzeentch, we will do the Lone Screamer onto the Plague Drones. So the 1 Lone Screamer onto the Plague Drones, 3 attacks with its Lamprey Bites. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and getting 1 re-roll and 2 definite misses. And here's the re-roll, which hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on a 3, and it wounds. 1 5-up invulnerable save, which fails. And they do 2 damage, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 1 and failing 1. So the injured Plague Drone in the back will fall from 3 wounds down to 2 left. Next, this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will strike against the Plague Drones. 7 attacks with his 2 sets of Malefic Talons, hitting on 2s and re-rolling 1s. Getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Getting 4 wounds. 4 5-up invulnerable saves. And they pass 3 of them. 2 damage piece, so 2 5-up disgustingly resilient rolls, and failing both. So the one wounded plague drone loses its final 2 wounds and is removed from the battlefield. So now for the other Demon Prince of Tzeentch, attacking the Great Unclean One with Corruption. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting all 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, and getting 4 wounds. 4, 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 3. And they are 2 damage apiece, so 6 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, passing 2 and failing 4. And so this Great Unclean One will fall from 18 starting wounds down to 14. Next, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, who is down to 15 wounds, will now attack the Plague Drones. 5 attacks onto the Plague Drones using the Staff of Tzeentch, hitting on 2s. And no rerolls, so only 3 hits. Wounding on 3s, Strength 6 versus Toughness 5, and getting 2 wounds. 2, 5 up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. But it does 3 damage, so 3, 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and passing 2, only failing 1. So the 1 plague drone in the back will fall from 3 wounds down to 2. Finally, on Tzeentch's side, the Iridescent Horror will attack the plague drones, while the Icon and the Instrument will attack the Great Unclean One. 2 attacks from the Iridescent Horror, hitting on 4s, getting 2 hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 5s, and failing to wound. And now the 2 combined attacks from the Icon and the Instrument onto the Great Unclean One, hitting on 4s, and both fail to hit. So now, unfortunately for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, the Chaos Demons of Nurgle will be able to strike back, starting with Rodigus onto Kairos Fateweaver. Since Rodigus is down to 8 wounds, he only has 4 attacks base, with the Gnarl Rod hitting on 2s, and getting 4 hits. He is also down to Strength 6 base, so the Gnarl Rod will make him Strength 7, which means he will be wounding on 4s, and he gets to reroll everything. So here's the rerolls. And getting 3 wounds. 3 up and vulnerable saves. And he passes all 3, so Kairos will not take any damage from this attack. But now Rodigus's Fanged Maw will get to attack, and it will make D6 attacks, getting just 1 extra attack. Hitting on a 2, rerolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince of Nurgle. And here's the reroll. Getting a hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, and no rerolls, so it fails. And now his Attendant's Claws and Teeth, D6 attacks, getting 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, getting 2 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, getting a definite fail and a reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to wound. Next, the Great Unclean One with Corruption will attack the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. So the Great Unclean One onto the Demon Prince of Tzeentch has 5 attacks base since he's still at 14 wounds with Corruption, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and getting 5 hits. Strength 9 thanks to Corruption against Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s and rerolling all fails. So 1 wound and 4 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 3 more wounds. Minus 3 AP, so 4 up invulnerable saves. And of course, he fails 3 of them. And they are D3 damage apiece. And so that will be 5 damage. So this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will fall from 7 wounds down to 2 left. And now for his Attendant's Claws and Teeth, D6 additional attacks, getting 4 attacks. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 4 hits. Strength 2 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s. And getting 2 6s, of course. Now what this means is that they are plus 1 damage apiece, so they will be 2 damage apiece instead of 1. And this means if either one of them gets past the prince's save, he is killed off. No AP, so 2 3-up armor saves, and he fails 1 of course. So that will be the final 2 damage onto the Demon Prince, which will kill him off. And because we are currently in Tzeentch's turn, he will not consolidate, because he will be able to move and charge next turn anyways, and doesn't want to waste his charge, which would waste his crushing bulk. So he will not consolidate. Now this Great Unclean One is going to attack the Pink Horrors. 5 attacks with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 4 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 5th hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, and getting 5 wounds, with one of them being a 6, but that won't matter against the 1 wound pink horrors. 5 4-up invulnerable saves, and that is 5 successful 4-up invulnerable saves. So the pink horrors know how to roll for 4-up invulnerable saves, but the screamers don't, apparently. Now for the attendant's claws and teeth. Hitting 1 additional attack, hitting on a 2, rerolling 1s, getting a hit. Strength 2 versus toughness 3 means wounding on a 5, rerolling 1s, and it gets a wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, and they saved that one as well. Finally, the plague drones back here will pile in and then fight. And so now everyone is within an inch of an enemy model or within an inch of someone who's within an inch. So everyone will be able to fight, and all 4 plague drones are going to place their attacks onto the Lord of Change. Starting with 5 attacks from the plague swords, thanks to the sergeant giving an extra 1. 5 attacks hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits, 2 definite misses, and a reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. So getting 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. 16 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. Getting 9 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 2 more hits, for 11 hits total. Wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. And getting 4 wounds and 7 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, and that's 5 more wounds for 9 wounds total. And we have 6 6s, which are an extra damage apiece. So we have 3 2-damage wounds and 6 3-damage wounds. So first, the 3-up invulnerables against the 2-damage wounds, passing all 3 of those. And now the 3-up invulnerable saves against the 6 3-damage wounds. And of course, failing 3 of those. So that's 9 damage taken. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will fall from 15 wounds down to 6 left. So now going into the morale phase, starting with this squad of pink horrors right here, they did lose 2 models this turn, and they only have a leadership of 7. However, they are within 6 inches of at least 1 friendly greater demon, so they can use this leadership of 10, which means it is impossible to fail. But since they do have an icon in their squad, if they roll a 1 for their morale test, they will get D6 slain models back. So here's the roll for their morale test, and they roll 4, so no slain models are returned. Next, we have this squad of plague drones, which lost 2 models this turn. And same situation as the pink horrors, they have a leadership of 7, but they are within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon, so it's impossible to fail, but they also have an icon just like the pink horrors, and so on a roll of a 1, they will get a slain plague drone back. And so here's their roll for morale test, and they roll a 2. So no slain models are returned. Next, this lone screamer lost 4 models from his squad this turn and only has a leadership of 7. And unfortunately, he is not within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon, and so he actually will have to take the morale test with the leadership of 7. So this means that on a roll of a 4-up, he is removed. And he passes with a 2. Finally, this unit of plague drones lost 1 model this turn, and so while it's impossible for them to fail because they have a natural leadership of 7 and they are within 6 inches of a friendly greater demon, they have an icon, and so on a roll of a 1, the slain plague drone will come back. And so here's that roll. And they roll a 2, so the slain plague drone will not return. So taking a look at their tactical objective cards, they failed to defend objective 3, and because the squad of 6 screamers was completely wiped out, which was sitting on top of it, they have no one currently holding it this turn, so they're not even 1 turn into holding it. And there is a squad of Nurgle plague bearers that are within easy marching distance of that objective marker, and so pretty much it's going to be impossible for them to complete defend objective 3, so they will toss this one away. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, the score currently sits at 0 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch and 1 victory point, thanks to First Blood, for the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle. Going into Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle have 5 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch have 4 command points available. Also a reminder that the Chaos Daemons of Nurgle held on to the tactical objective card Witch Hunter from the previous turn, and at the beginning of this turn, Chaos Daemons of Nurgle turn 2, they are currently holding 3 objective markers, so they also get to draw 3 new tactical objective cards. And so they drew Secure Objective -4. Score 1 victory point if you control objective marker 4 at the end of your turn. Supremacy. Score D3 victory points if you control any 3 objective markers at the end of your turn. And Overwhelming Firepower. Score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during the shooting phase of your turn. If 3 or more enemy units were destroyed during the shooting phase of your turn, score D3 victory points instead. Also, at the start of the turn, we need to resolve Reverberating Summons, so we get to roll a dice for each friendly Nurgle unit within 7 inches of a Great Unclean One armed with a Doomsday Bell, and on a 4-up, a slain model is returned to the unit. So this unit of Plague Drones will roll a dice, and they are looking for a 4-up, and they fail with a 1. And now this unit of Plague Drones will get to roll. And here's their roll, and they do get a slain model back. And he will be placed right here, right in the middle of the group, but more than an inch away from any enemy models. So now, going into the actual movement phase, this squad of Plague Drones will remain still. This Great Unclean One will remain still. This Demon Prince of Nurgle is going to move over to here, and he will finish his movement right here, just over an inch away from these pink horrors, but making sure to stay within 6 inches of both the Great Unclean One and the Plague Drone squad. This squad of Plague Bearers will remain still, sitting on objective marker 6. This squad of Plague Bearers will also remain still, sitting on objective marker 2. Rodigus will remain locked in combat with Kairos Fateweaver. This squad of Plague Bearers is going to move up the board up to 5 inches, and they will finish their movement right here. This squad of Plague Drones will remain locked in combat. This Great Unclean One is going to move up the board up to 7 inches, and he will finish his movement right here. He is just over an inch away from the Screamer, and just over an inch away from Kairos Fateweaver, but he is slightly closer to the Screamer for the purposes of targeting with Smite. And now this Demon Prince of Nurgle is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And he will finish his movement right here, and he is slightly closer to the Screamer than Kairos Fateweaver. And now the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 2 command points, going from 5 down to 3, in order to use the stratagem Revolting Regeneration. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one of your Nurgle demon units. One model in the unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in the unit, and that unit has suffered any casualties, a single slain model from the unit is returned to play with 1 wound remaining. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use that card on Rodigus in order to try to get him D3 lost wounds back. And so here's the D3, rolling a 1, which means the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 3 down to 2 in order to reroll that. And here's the reroll, rolling another 1, and that was a different dice too, so only getting 1 lost wound back. So Rodigus will go from 8 wounds back up to 9. So now, going into the Psychic phase, Rodigus is going to attempt to manifest Fleshy Abundance onto himself, and he will also attempt to manifest Virulent Blessing onto himself. We also need to resolve his Warlord trait, Pestilent Miasma, which states that we roll a dice at the start of the turn for each enemy unit within an inch of Rodigus, and on a 4-up they suffer a mortal wound. So this is for Kairos Fateweaver, and he will take a mortal wound. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 16 starting wounds down to 15. So now for Fleshy Abundance onto himself, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he passes with a 6. Kairos Fateweaver will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for a 7, and does with a 10. So now for Virulent Blessing onto himself, which has a warp charge of 7, and he passes with a 9. Kairos Fateweaver will use his second Deny the Witch test, looking for a 10, and he rolls a 14, so he denies it. So now the Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Lone Screamer. Smite has a warp charge value of 5, and he passes with a 9. Kairos Fateweaver will use his third and final Deny the Witch test, which passes with an 11, so it will not go off. This Great Unclean One will now attempt to manifest Nurgle's Rot. And Nurgle's Rot has a warp charge value of 7, fails with a 4. And now that it's the Psychic phase, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use 1 command point, going from 2 down to 1, for a command reroll to reroll the 1. And here's the reroll, and it passes with an 8. So now the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstav will attempt to deny the Witch, and fails with a 5, counting the psychic test bonus, and they will not use any command points to reroll that because they will need their 4 final command points for this next fight phase if they want to have any chance of surviving. So they will not reroll that. So Nurgle's Rot will go off. And so we roll a d6 for each unit, excluding Nurgle units within 7 inches of the Psyker. On a 4-up, the unit being rolled for suffers d3 mortal wounds. And so that will include the Lone Screamer, the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, and Kairos Fateweaver. So first rolling for the Screamer, looking for a 4-up. And they do get it. So d3 mortal wounds. And it will do 2 mortal wounds. And so the Screamer will lose his final 2 wounds and be removed. Now for Kairos Fateweaver on a 4-up, and it will go off, and it will do d3 mortal wounds, and of course it'll do 3 mortal wounds. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 15 wounds down to 12. And now on the Demon Prince looking for a 4-up, which they get, and now d3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds as well. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 5. And now the Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Smite onto Kairos Fateweaver because Kairos is closer than the Demon Prince. So Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and he passes with an 11. So Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to deny the Witch, looking for at least a 12, and gets the 12. What do you know? Wow, so he does deny the Witch. That would have been d6 mortal wounds onto Kairos. So now this Great Unclean One will attempt to manifest Stream of Corruption and Smite onto this squad of pink horrors. Starting with Stream of Corruption, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he passes with a 9. The Demon Prince of Tzeentch, all the way over on the other side of the map, is within 24 inches. So he will attempt to deny the Witch, and fails by also rolling a 9. So we'll do d3 mortal wounds onto the pink horrors, and it'll do 2 mortal wounds. If the pink horrors hadn't lost 2 models the previous turn, meaning they would have been at 10 models, that would have done d6 mortal wounds instead. But because they're down to 8, it only did d3, and now they will be down to 6. So 6 models are now left alive in the squad. And now for Smite, which has a warp charge value of 7 now, and so it will pass with a 7. Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will attempt to deny the Witch, and does with a 9, now that he's down to +1 psychic test bonus for being at 6 wounds. So finally, this Demon Prince of Nurgle will attempt to manifest Smite onto the pink horrors. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and he gets that with an 11. But the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword could still deny, looking for a 12, and fails by rolling an 8 with the +1 psychic test bonus. And because the Demon Prince rolled an 11, he gets to roll d6 mortal wounds. And it does 4 mortal wounds, of course. And so the final 3 regular pink horrors will be removed, and then the instrument will be removed, leaving only the iridescent horror and the demonic icon left. Going into the shooting phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, both of the Plague Drone squads are locked in combat, and so is Rodigus, so they cannot fire. However, this Great Unclean One with the Plague Flail is able to shoot within an inch of enemy units, so he will fire into the pink horrors. 3 shots with the Plague Flail, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, getting 2 hits and a re-roll. And here's the re-roll, still failing to hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, and getting 2 wounds. Now this is 2 damage apiece, and the damage does carry over from model to model. So if a single one of these is failed for the invuln, both of the final pink horrors are killed off. So 2 4-up and vulnerable saves, and they fail one of them. And so, unfortunately for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, they are now going to have to use one of their 4 remaining command points, bring them from 4 down to 3 for a command reroll in order to reroll that 1, because if the Plague Flail is allowed to kill those 2 pink horrors in the shooting phase, that will allow the Chaos Demons of Nurgle to achieve the tactical objective card Overwhelming Firepower, since they destroyed an enemy unit in the shooting phase. So they have to re-roll this, 1, so that they can deny the victory point thanks to the tactical objective card, but also because if those pink horrors are killed, then that Great Unclean One can charge into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and help out in that combat. So while they were really hoping to have all 4 command points for the fight phase, they are going to have to use one now. And here's the reroll. And it still fails, but at least they tried to save it. But it will do 2 damage, and the damage does carry over until either all of the damage has been allocated or the entire unit is wiped out, so the final 2 pink horrors are killed off. So the demonic icon and the iridescent horror are now removed from the battlefield. This does also mean, of course, that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will definitely not be holding objective marker 1 at the beginning of their own turn, so they will only be controlling 2 objective markers at the most. That's really not good for them. So now, going into the assault phase for Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2. This Great Unclean One, who is now no longer engaged in combat, will declare charge onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will attempt a multi-charge onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, and the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff. This Great Unclean One will declare charge onto Kairos Fateweaver. This Demon Prince of Nurgle with wings will declare charge onto Kairos Fateweaver. And finally, these Plague Bearers will declare charge onto the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. So we will begin with the Plague Bearers. And here's their charge range, getting 11 inches, of course. And so here's their finished charge. They are all within an inch, or within an inch of someone who's within an inch of the Demon Prince of Tzeentch, so they will all be locked in combat. Next, we will do the Great Unclean One's charge. And here's his charge range, getting 7 inches. And he is now locked in combat. Next, this Demon Prince of Nurgle will declare its charge onto Kairos Fateweaver. And here's the charge range, getting 8 inches. And he is now locked in combat. Next, this Great Unclean One will charge into the Lord of Change. No Overwatch, and he's just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it in. And the Great Unclean One is now within an inch and locked in combat. Finally, we will roll the charge range for this Demon Prince. And here's the charge range, rolling just 5 inches. And unfortunately, he is going through a crater, so that will only give him a 3-inch charge, but luckily for him, he is just within 4 inches of the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, and so he will make it into combat, just getting within an inch. And so the Demon Prince of Nurgle is now locked in combat with the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. And before I forget, we do need to resolve the Crushing Bulk from the Great Unclean One onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, looking for a 4-up, and it fails, so no Crushing Bulk. At the beginning of the fight phase, we need to resolve the Locus of Trickery from Tzeentch, rolling 2 dice, taking away the highest, and that was actually a really good roll for them, so hit rolls of 4 will not count. So first, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to select the Great Unclean One with Corruption to fight Kairos Fateweaver. 5 attacks with Corruption onto Kairos Fateweaver, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits, but the 4 doesn't count, so getting 4 hits. Strength 9 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s and rerolling, getting 2 wounds and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 2 more wounds. So 4 up and vulnerable saves. Kairos Fateweaver will fail 3 of them. And since the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch had already used 1 too many command points, they will elect to use another to go from 3 down to 2 in order to use a command reroll to reroll one of the 3s. And here's the reroll, and it passes. So only 2 go through. 2 D3 damage, and only doing 2 damage. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 12 wounds down to 10 left. Now for the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, D6 attacks, getting 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Ooh, and that's a bad roll, getting 2 hits and 3 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, and getting all 5 hits. Wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, so failing to wound, but getting 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 1 wound, 1 4-up and vulnerable save, which passes. So now the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will use their final 2 command points, going from 2 down to 0 for the Stratagem Counteroffensive. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged has fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. And that will be Kairos Fateweaver, who is still at 10 wounds, attacking Rodigus. 5 attacks with the Staff of Tomorrow onto Rodigus, hitting on 3s, no rerolls, and getting 4 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s and getting 3 wounds. 3 5-up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2. And the Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to use their final command point, going from 1 down to 0 in order to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll, and it passes, so only failing 1 invulnerable save. And this will do D6 damage, doing just 1 damage. 1 5-up Disgustingly Resilient roll, which fails. So Rodigus will lose the wound that he got back this turn, going from 9 down to 8. Now the Demon Prince of Nurgle will strike against Kairos Fateweaver. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Ouch. And that is a very bad roll, because 4s don't count. So 1 hit, 3 definite misses, and 3 rerolls. So here's the 3 rerolls, and getting 4 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, and getting 2 wounds, one of them being a 6. So 1 4-up invulnerable save against the 2 damage wound, which will go through, and the 4-up invulnerable save against the 3 damage wound, which will be saved. So only 2 damage goes through. But that will take Kairos Fateweaver from 10 wounds down to 8. Next will be this Great Unclean One who charged into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. 5 attacks with the Doomsday Bell, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Getting 2 hits, 1 definite miss thanks to the 4 and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls. Getting 1 more hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 3s. No rerolls, so 1 6, which will add 1 to the damage, if it goes through. So 1 3-up invulnerable save, which fails of course. So D3 plus 1 damage, and they roll a 2 on the D3, so 3 damage total. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will fall from 6 wounds down to 3 left. Now for the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, which will roll for D6 attacks, getting 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll, and here's the reroll, getting 2 hits total. Strength 2 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, and both fail to wound. Now for the Demon Prince of Nurgle, placing his attacks onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, but first piling in up to 3 inches. And he will finish right here, and now he will attack. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. 3 hits, 2 definite misses thanks to the 4s, and 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 2 more hits for 5 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s. No rerolls, getting 3 wounds. And one of them is a 6, which could matter, so we will do that separately. So starting with the wound roll of a 6, which will do 3 damage if it goes through instead of 2, so 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. And now the 2 damage wounds, and both of those pass as well. So now the final charging unit is this squad of 10 Plague Bearers, and they will fight against the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. 11 attacks, hitting on 4s, no rerolls, and the 4s don't actually count, so getting 4 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. 2 wounds, 2 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, getting 3 wounds total, and the 6 is 2 damage instead of 1. So the 1 4-up invulnerable save against the 2 damage attack, which will go through of course, and the 2 4-up invulnerables against the 1 damage attacks, and both of those are saved. But still taking 2 damage, which will drop the Demon Prince of Tzeentch from 5 wounds down to 3 left. And so now that all of the charging units have gone, now we will go to units that were already locked in combat and or were charged this turn, going back and forth, starting with Nurgle since it is their turn. And so we will start with this squad of plague drones onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. 5 models, including the Sergeant, which means 6 attacks with the plague swords, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. But the 4s don't actually count, so 2 hits, 3 definite misses, and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, still failing to hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, rerolling everything, and getting a wound and a reroll. And here's the reroll, and getting another wound. The 6, of course, will do 2 damage, the 5 will do 1 damage. So 3-up invulnerable against the 1 damage will pass, 3-up invulnerable against the 2 damage will also pass. 20 attacks from the Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. Getting 11 hits and 3 rerolls, but of course the 4s don't count, so actually getting 9 hits and 3 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting only 1 additional hit, 4 doesn't count. 10 hits total. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, rerolling everything. Getting 4 wounds and 6 rerolls. And here's the rerolls. Getting 1 more regular wound. This means, of course, there's 2 damage wounds and 3 damage wounds. Starting with the 3-up invulnerable save against the 3 damage wounds, and he fails 1 of them. So of course that will remove the final 3 wounds on the Lord of Change, which will force him to use his once per game reroll thanks to the Impossible Robe. And so here's the one-time reroll, which still rolls a 1. So he would have been slain no matter what, because on the one-time reroll, if you roll a 1, you are slain no matter how many wounds you have remaining. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is finally killed off, and he is now removed from the battlefield. And so now the Plague Drones are able to consolidate, so they will shuffle around a little bit, and they will end up like so. So the only unit from Tzeentch that hasn't fought yet, who is engaged, is the Demon Prince of Tzeentch with 3 wounds left. So he will attack next, and he will place all of his attacks onto the Plague Drones to try to knock some of them out. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 6 hits and 1 reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 7th hit. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means 3s to wound, and getting 4 wounds. 4 5 up and vulnerable saves, and they pass 2, failing 2. And they're 2 damage apiece, and all 5 Plague Drones have all 4 of their wounds each, so we can roll these all at the same time because they will all only go onto 1 Plague Drone. So 4 5 up disgustingly resilient rolls, and they fail all 4. No rerolls. And so 1 Plague Drone at the back is simply wiped out. But now the 4 remaining Plague Drones, including the Sergeant, will attack back against the Demon Prince, and they are all able to fight. 5 attacks from the Plague Swords, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits, 2 definite misses, and a reroll. And here's the reroll, getting a 3rd hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, rerolling, getting 1 wound and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, still failing to wound. 1 3-up armor save, and it passes. And I do need to make a correction, because I've been so used to only taking invulnerable saves. The Demon Prince does have a 3-up armor save, and that means he did actually pass the 1 2 damage wound from the Plague Bearers. So he will go back up to 5 wounds. So the Demon Prince of Tzeentch is back up to 5 wounds because he technically did pass the Plague Bearers 2 damage attack and both of the 1 damage attacks. So now for the 16 attacks from the Plague Drone's Prehensile Proboscis, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, and that was actually a very solid hit with only 1 miss if the 4s actually counted, but of course the 4s don't. So far out of 16 attacks, getting 3 definite misses, 4 rerolls, and 9 hits. And here's the rerolls, getting 2 more hits for 11 hits total. Wounding on 5s, rerolling, getting 3 wounds and 8 rerolls. And here's the rerolls, only getting 1 more wound. 4 3-up armor saves, fails 3 of them, and they are 2 damage apiece. So much for a 3-up armor save. That will kill off the final 5 wounds, and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch is removed. And of course, as I was removing the Demon Prince, the sword from the Sergeant on the Plague Drone squad broke. Of course, always more repair work to do. But now the Plague Drones can consolidate. And they will consolidate like so, making sure to stay within 3 inches of the center of Objective Marker 3 in order to hold it, but also this way they will be close enough to the Great Unclean One with the Doomsday Bell in order to attempt to get models back with reverberating summons. Finally, the only unit left to fight in this fight phase is Rodicus with his 8 wounds left. 4 attacks with the Gnarl Rod onto Kairos Fateweaver, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and 4s don't count, of course. Getting 3 hits. Strength 7 with the Gnarl Rod, since he's down to 8 wounds, against Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, rerolling. And they all wound, and one of them is a 6. So the 2 4s are 3 damage apiece, and the 6 is 4 damage. So the 2 4-up invulnerable saves against the 3 damage, and both of those pass, and a 4-up invulnerable against the 4 damage, which will go through, of course. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 8 wounds down to 4 left. Now for D6 extra attacks from the Fanged Maw, getting 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, and getting a wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which he passes. And finally, the Attendant's Claws and Teeth, D6 attacks, getting 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting a hit and a reroll. Here's the reroll. Getting a 2nd hit. Strength 2 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 6s, rerolling 1s, and getting a 6. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. Going into the morale phase, this squad of plague drones lost 1 model this turn, which means it's impossible for them to fail with their leadership of 7. However, they do have an icon, so on a roll of a 1 in their morale test, they will get a slain model back. And so here's their morale test roll, rolling a 3, so no slain models are returned. So taking a look at the tactical objective cards, Chaos Demons of Nurgle did successfully complete Witch Hunter for 1 victory point. They failed to secure Objective 4 since it's in the Tzeentch deployment zone. They did complete Supremacy because they do currently hold 4 objective markers, so we will roll for that. So D3 victory points, getting just 1. And thanks to the Great Unclean One with Plague Flail, they did kill 1 enemy unit in the shooting phase to get 1 victory point for overwhelming firepower. And because Objective Marker 4 is in the enemy deployment zone, Chaos Demons of Nurgle are going to throw that tactical objective card away. And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Nurgle turn 2, the score currently sits at 4 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Nurgle also have 0 command points available. At the beginning of the turn, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch drew 2 new tactical objective cards because they are currently holding 2 objective markers, and they drew Blood and Guts, score 1 victory point if an enemy unit was destroyed during the fight phase this turn. If 3 or more enemy units were destroyed during the fight phase this turn, score D3 victory points instead. And Psychological Warfare, score 1 victory point if your opponent failed a morale test during this turn. If your opponent failed 3 or more morale tests, score D3 victory points instead. And with that, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to concede the game. Neither side has Linebreaker, and neither side has Slay the Warlord, and so the final score will be 4 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, and so we will have a major victory for the Chaos Demons of Nurgle thanks to a concession. So now that the game is over, and it's been announced that the Chaos Demons of Nurgle have achieved a major victory thanks to a concession, with a final score of 4-0 in Nurgle's favor, I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on this game. First, of course, is the reason for concession at this point, even though we are only really 1.5 game turns into the game. But I think it's pretty obvious that Tzeentch is about a turn away from being tabled at this point. They have 2 units of Pink Horrors left alive that are sitting back holding objectives, 1 fully healthy Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstab, and Kairos Fateweaver, who is down to 4 wounds. And that's it. Both Demon Princes have been killed off, both squads of Screamers have been killed off, the squad of Pink Horrors with the Icon and the Instrument's been killed off, and the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe was killed off. Whereas on the Nurgle side, they have literally lost 3 Plague Drones, and that's it. No Plague Bearers, no Great Unclean Ones, no Demon Princes, no full squads. And the 3 Plague Drones are from 2 different squads too. 1 from one and 2 from the other. So both squads of Plague Drones are still over half health. And they're both able, at the beginning of the next Nurgle turn, to try to get more models back thanks to reverberating summons. So Tzeentch got crushed in this game. And unfortunately, there's just no other way to put it. In Tzeentch turn 1, it looked like things might be going their way. They got some good psychic powers off. They killed some Plague Drones through their psychic powers, which was better than expected. They charged into combat, and Kairos Fateweaver immediately knocked 10 wounds off of Rodigus. It was incredible. But then they completely fell apart, and Nurgle was able to bring things right back into balance, with the one squad of Plague Drones using counteroffensive to effectively almost wipe out both squads of Screamers. And it killed off the 1 squad of 6, and it brought the squad of 5, thanks to losing a model earlier in the game, down to just 1 model, which was quite unexpected and really did not help Tzeentch. Also, the fact that the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword really didn't do anything wounding in close combat, even though he is more close combat than the others. Now, I do realize that I didn't use the Baleful Sword, but that's because talking about strength 6 versus strength 7 doesn't matter against the plague drones, which are toughness 5. Either way, you're only wounding on 3s. And if you use the sword, you then have to subtract 1 from hit rolls. And of course, the Demon Princes were on the other side of the map, so there's no rerolls for the Lord of Change. So I feel like statistically, you'd be better off with the staff and hitting on 2s rather than the sword hitting on 3s against the plague drones. Now, against the Great Unclean Ones, the sword is way better because you're wounding better, and the D6 damage can make a much bigger difference versus an automatic 3. But against the Plague Drones, the automatic 3 damage is better because you can only do up to 4 damage per model anyways, and there's a chance they'll be able to pass 1 out of every 3 for disgustingly resilient. So you'd be better off just using the 3 damage attack, which is the staff, to try to deal with the Plague Drones. It was just sort of unfortunate with the way that it all worked out. But yeah, so Tzeentch was pretty heavily crushed, and the other problem is, even if they weren't about to be tabled, Nurgle was about to heavily run away with the victory because currently they are holding 4 objective markers. So if they can continue to hold those 4 objective markers, then in the beginning of their next turn, they will get another 4 objective cards to be able to try to complete. While Tzeentch obviously was only able to draw 2, and only one of them was actually kind of doable, because the psychological warfare one is just not going to happen with the greater demons running around. Very difficult with the greater demons around for demons to fail morale checks. And even if they're not around, I mean, that lone screamer passed a morale check after losing 4 models. Had a 50-50 chance of dying off from the morale phase, but managed to survive. So psychological warfare was very unlikely, which meant the only chance they had was blood and guts, but the problem is they only have 2 units that are in a position to fight this turn. And so at most, they would probably only be able to kill off 2 if they were lucky. They'd be able to kill off 2 units. Brodigus and maybe, I don't know, a Demon Prince or something between the Lord of Change and Kairos Fateweaver, but that would be a long shot. So at most, you'll get 1 victory point for that. Great. Now you're only down by 3 for a turn until Nurgle finishes off the 4 wounds on Kairos, which is the other problem. Is Kairos Fateweaver was lucky to survive that round, that last fight phase. So the fact that he did survive doesn't mean a whole lot because it probably only delayed his death by a turn. And so obviously if Kairos was killed off in the next Nurgle turn, that would be Slay the Warlord. Then you have 3 or 4 units that can attack and kill off the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, finishes off the other Greater Demon, but also Nurgle is very close to Linebreaker at this point, which would be another victory point. And with drawing 4 new tactical objective cards, there's a chance they would get at least 1 or 2 that would be doable. And so the spread would just increase exponentially at this point in Nurgle's favor. So overall, I thought it was a good game. Thought it was interesting to play. Thought it was interesting how quickly everything spiraled out of control and fell apart for Tzeentch. Thought they actually had a chance at the beginning of their turn when they went up and were able to get some psychic powers off and made a good charge, but it didn't last, unfortunately for them. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one.